initiative and they came forward. And the idea is the Mahila Sabha should cater to resource governance. But initially, when Mahila Sabha started, it was started talking about domestic violence, and these issues were the first issues that came up. So like that, after successive meetings, slowly the discussions progress to other aspects on resource, water, and all this aspect. So now, because of this Mahila Sabha, because women have a space in these spaces, they are getting a frequent opportunity to articulate issues, which is also having an impact on women's participation in other like, for example, GPDPs or the Manrega meeting. So so having a platform like this has, also giving women more opportunity to speak, and this also an impact on women's participation in other aspect like GPDP. So that is one thing that we're working on, and yeah. So basically, I'll speak about this stuff.
Thank you, Riju. You put it very nicely, especially how दीदी ने भी सुबह जैसे बात किया कि महिलाओं के और पानी का प्रॉब्लम देखने जाने से पहले उनका अपना प्रॉब्लम देखना पड़ता है, उनका अपना होना पड़ता है, तब जाके हम आगे की बातें कर सकते हैं. सो इसी पॉइंट पे मैं प्रीति राव जी को बुलाना चाहूंगी, क्योंकि उनका जो काम है काफी, बोलूंगी मैं, घरेलू स्केल से ही शुरू होता है और वो बहुत जरूरी भी है एनवायरमेंट के पर्सपेक्टिव से भी, पर काम हर घर से शुरू होता है. और आज हम सुबह मधुलिका से ये चर्चा हमने शुरू की और पूरे बस में भी बात की, और बार बार ये हो रहा है कि हम अपने घर से ही चेंज लाना शुरू कर सकते हैं, और वो चेंज महिला ही लाती है. Over to you, Priti, about your experience of bioenzyme. And she is the president of Wiki Bioenzyme Council, by the way.
Good afternoon. This bioenzyme has far more potential than what we are today talking about. Our main idea was, how do we put enzyme to our natural resource, whether it's the soil or air, because it has the way it functions is completely different and it's far more powerful. But now, when we have these bioenzymes are made from kitchen waste. When we start making bioenzyme, when we talk about bioenzyme, we are handling the solid waste, the kitchen waste generating from home. And then while making, the way the process happens, the way we convert it to products. So, that the journey of the entire enzyme, when the women are, where the women, why? So these enzymes can be made from the vegetable waste and from the food waste. Now, when we have to tackle, because every drain which drains out from home, city, it matters. Now, what goes into our drain? Here, the role of women, it comes. The woman is a nurturer. She takes care of her home. She takes care of what goes into our family or family needs, how the woman is taking care of. So this is where we started introducing enzymes. The citrus peel, it smells very good. It was easy for women to accept it. And today we have more, since we are into making entrepreneurs, we are looking at the whole mom entrepreneurs. You can say women can make things for themselves and they can work from home. They can do at their convenience. You make it and you share it with others. So here, I feel if any housewives they think नहीं हमें किसी organization से जुड़ना है, हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते हमारा, but they are not helpless. What I'm trying to say, at home, every individual can play a role in bringing that ecological balance. We don't have to depend on any organization. Just little more awareness, just little more action, just coming one step out of the comfort zone makes a lot of difference. What we buy from outside, what comes into my house, what goes out of my drain, that matters. Every home can be an ecological. What drains out it definitely matters. And I would like to say thank you for this.
You could have said more about the fact, and we can discuss why women are the only responsible for creating bioenzyme, because then it's a completely different discussion why women are cooking itself, why men are not cooking. So maybe when we start discussing gender, we will also start talking about men, what men should be doing. And we had a little discussion before also on this. So maybe at this point, thank you so much, Preeti. I invite Kanna to take it over and share your experience of, again, you're bringing grassroots from other region of the country. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mansi. And very good afternoon to everybody here. I'm Kanna, and I'm representing like Saki Holders. And it's great like to listen to all these wonderful talks over here. And I missed listening to you when you brought from Mansi, like and what she said, like you brought a very balanced perspective between the gender. It's not black or white, but it's like men are also included like as a part of like women, which is great. And also I would like to thank Rachel like for actually setting up the tone to what I would like to discuss and present like in my experience. So he put forward like a few questions which are very interesting to start with. He said about community-based institutions, right? And he said like that most of these community-based institutions are not necessarily inclusive. And the question, like he said, like how to make these community-based institutions more inclusive, and how to enable like these women to participate more, like what can be done. And he gave a very good example about these Mahila Sabhas. So from my personal experience of working with the grassroots, as well as my research experience and the article that I published on Mahila Sabhas or the spaces like that he's referring to. So I put it in a different framework. I would say like this is necessary for, so what is necessary to enable like women to come out and participate like more actively. I said it's necessary to create these enabling spaces and supporting structures. So there is also this argument that, okay, are rights enough? So when we jump to this particular thing called rights. So every time like we speak about like women should have rights, or men should have rights, or children should have rights, but are rights enough? So I would like to touch upon these two things, how these supporting structures and enabling spaces. So already he gave this example of Mahila Sabhas as the enabling spaces, which provides like women to come out and speak or discuss more conveniently. But what these supporting spaces also needs are the structures to support them, because you have a space and space cannot be just out in the open. There should be like something, some structure to protect that. But unless like that is protected, it becomes like an open source resources, as Richard was talking about. Common property resources like do have regimes, but once your regimes are broken, that's when it becomes open resources, and that's when like the damage is done. So creating spaces are important for women, but they should be supported by structures, and those structures, like I would say, something for an example, SAGs. It's a small example like that. Now, how these spaces and supporting structures have enabled women in parts of Vidarbha region, where I had this opportunity and pleasure like to talking to these women who started like conserving these wetlands. So how the cooperative societies as well as SHGs and the trainings that are imparted like to these women, and the trainings that they received as a part of like this, being a part of these cooperatives and the SHGs, enabled them and gave them an edge over men to manage these resources was an interesting journey. So if you go back like to the colonialization and colonization of India, most of these common property resources have been converted into either private property or they have been nationalized, where the rights of the local communities are totally taken away or curtailed. But after a certain point of time, when PESA came into existence, and in one particular, I don't exactly remember like the name of the village, but that's where women and men used FRA, Forest Rights Act, to take control of that particular water body. And there is another village where I've been personally is Kanhalgaon, which is also in Gadchibowli district of Maharashtra, where people used PESA to take control of the water body. But what happened here is interesting. So after taking over that particular water body, it came under community control. And as you expect, like men to take, as expected, like men take over the responsibility, but they fail miserably. And the reason for that is it's like they got the rights, but they're not prepared to exercise those rights. because, and at that point of time, women take control of these water bodies, and they got an edge because of the kind of what do I say, training that these women went through these SHG trainings. Like they know how to maintain accounts, they know how to go to the bank, they know how to organize meetings, they know how to troubleshoot, they know how to go for like conflict resolution. That gave them an edge over men, and they were able to manage those water resources. And now they are doing fisheries and fish culture. And at Kanhalgaon, these women, like they said, like they made over 3 lakh profit recently in the season, and that was interesting. And it's not that like only women did that; like men are also a part of it. But men showed a lot of trust in the women, that they said, when we failed, you take this over and see like if you can do it. And women took that as a challenge, and they lived up to that expectation. So having rights, having creating spaces is good, but you have to put the structures in place. But having rights are important, but one should stand up for the rights. And unless like people are not prepared to exercise those rights, then it's as bad as good as like not having rights at all. With that, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Kanna. Thanks a lot. I think it was good to hear from all the rounds, because what we often get into a situation, again, a trap which is happening in my dialogue as well. The moment the word gender comes, we naturally turn into women. So my next round of discussion will be, where are men and what are men doing in water sector, and how can we change the dynamics from the house to the parliament, where in India we only had 2 water ministers so far, by the way, since independence. What should men do in the society to make sure that it is more gender inclusive? Putting women in the vulnerable side is quite easy to give them and facilitate them. And it's a wild card question for all my speakers, because I didn't tell them this question is going to come, because we all have to realize gender is not woman. Woman is woman. And this session is on water, gender, and women. So we discussed first round of women. Let us discuss men also. Why men are so interested to take the policy decisions and not take the responsibility of fetching the water, not take the responsibility of other things, and how can we bring that change? You can also do some visionary statement, not necessary from your organization itself, but what should we do? Not necessarily you, but what are the changes we require in the society, where men have, first of all, acceptance for more women leadership, then also acceptance for taking responsibility of water right from home and wastewater right from. Why Bioenzyme Council is 90% women and not for 60% men and 40% women? I start with you. Why men only want to get into those business which are economic oriented? Why not something like bioenzyme, which is environment oriented? Why money is always a value factor which is used by men to get into engagement? I really want to bring this discussion from D3, because all education, it boils down to employment. And I would like to see why women have to be the only enlightened soul, and how can they enlighten men more, and have the gender discussion on men, not on women, because women is already a subject of discussion. So let us have men discussion, how to bring change among the men.
Thank you, Mansi, and it's a very interesting question. Now, if you ask me personally, I don't see it's just about men or women. This is about the conscious decision, what one takes it. And we have quite yes, we have few men, and I don't say they are not playing an important role. They are playing very important role in our organization. But I feel there are few relate with the problems, who relate with the actual grassroots issues. And when I talk about this women or a mompreneur, you will find most of these are because mothers who can't see their children getting affected. All of these men are still little away from these, but yes, there are. We need to make them more aware, and we need to realize, make them realize ultimately this is what it is. What we do at the end of the day, how are we contributing today or tomorrow for our natural resources? You'll find even the lake, when you see about the counting, cleaning the lakes, you will find most of the activities are done by women. But yes, because I think they are more connected, they're nurturer, they nurture, and earth is a mother, and women are known for nurturing. And I feel that's the inner instinct every woman are there in this, who consciously look into nurturing the space we are in. And I feel this is the reason. And probably, yes, if more men become a little more aware about stuff, or they can get connected with it, they will definitely be more.
Thank you. Interesting. When we want to talk about men, we also end up talking about women. Because actually the word men comes out of woman itself, if you just look at the spelling also. I really want to ask you, Chandra, because your workforce is women. And you rightly started why you are doing this. Preeti did not answer me, but I want to ask from you, what should men do? Everyone does not have three sisters or two sisters, but what can we do in the society? I just want to make it friendly. Huh?
No, they can do a lot. At least not stop the women like what Didi said
Yes.
from doing what she does. Because they can do it much faster. He can be a supporting system. That's one thing. And I've seen in some villages where huge ponds, artificial ponds are to be dug and other thing. So the Panchayat president, obviously, by and large, are men. They take a call and do that, put that MNRG money or some system into the thing. And then Alang, which was a totally a dry area, surprising to see within 12 kilometers area, there are 2,000 dry bore. So instead of, and the TDS was something very skyrocketing. I told them, you just take the rainwater and do Punguru method. I think most of entrepreneurs know what Punguru is all about. Taking the rainwater and putting it back into the dry borewell. Surprisingly, the day I was God blessed. I did this for a whole village in Alang. Within half an hour, I completed all the job, artificial ponds and thing. Men did a great job. Because physically, I can't expect a woman to dig well and all those stuff. They did a great job. They galvanized together all the raw materials for gravel, sand, everything. Were naturally brought. No material was purchased. And surprisingly, we had almost 30,000 liters saved in one go within half an hour's time in one single pond. And
So-
there was an old dry well also.
Yeah.
Well was a stone built well with proper barricade and wall and other thing. Huge one. So we pulled out one stone from that, then put gravel and sand and made an artificial
I
filter.
will interrupt here because we don't want
Natural
to get into
filter and the
detail.
rainwater was harvested and put it in the
No, are you saying that we need more time and space and more pedagogy to get some kind of
basically-
way to how to explain to men that they have to do this?
No. Basically, it is the understanding of any human being,
Okay.
irrespective of
Very
whether they
good
are men or
question.
women.
Very good point, because actually eventually it boils down to feministic and masculine approach of looking at environment, and it's not about men and women. I actually want to now ask Richu, you being the youngest of our panel here, what is your instinct saying? Let's not talk about organization or project and all. Let's not bring them there, because we are trying to bring a change and we want to keep the conversation general. What is your generation thinking to that men should be doing to make it more inclusive? You know that it is very skewed in gender. What should men do? Boys do? No word women should be used now in your conversation. Go ahead.
So I think that odd question is beyond me to answer.
What you will do? Go ahead.
But I would like to, connecting it to some of my work, I would like to point at two instances where we try to change the perception of men. So that is something that I would like to speak. So one is that, so we do something called water games. So water games is actually, again, like he said, it's a tool to trigger discussions around water. So again, it is coming from game theory. So when we did this water games, so there is, we experimented like this. So in one section, one game we played only with men. And then the kind of discussion that came, we compared it with, we again played the game with women. And then we played the game with both men and women. And the kind of discussion that came in all three scenarios were so different. So that is something that I felt, because when men were speaking, when only men were playing, So they were only thinking about their, increasing their economic growth or whatever. And when women were speaking in that thing, so they also spoke about, we need to conserve water in that when it came. But when both men and women came together, so there was a opportunity for both of them to discuss. So their both point of view was, placed next to each other. And that in itself, the outcome from that was much better than how we did it with, yeah. So that is one.
We aspire for that situation in the boardroom and in the policy room, by the way, and that's why it was strategically to have 60% men in my panel, because then we can discuss what men should be doing. It is very strategic to have lesser women.
Men should just listen.
Yeah, absolutely. You just nailed it. Let's have a round of applause for it. Men have to listen now. That's very important. It should go in the white paper which we are trying to prepare. Okay, Kanna, you have to be very precise, because I want to open the conversation to all our participants, because it's a very hot topic for everyone. I would like every participant then now to focus on gender, and please pardon the women to discuss now. If you want to discuss women, just discuss leadership, not the vulnerable side. फुलबासन भाई ने आज दिन शुरू ही किया है लीडर से, तो अबला नारी सिंड्रोम से हम लोग को बाहर आने दीजिए प्लीज. Over to you, Kanna.
Thank you. Thank you, Mansi. And again, I'll take the lead from what Richu just spoke about this game theory, and also pick up from what you said, to speak from my instincts. So one, what Richu, I would take it forward from there. But when I spoke to people, especially in the rural places, what they said was, again, as an outsider, I always go with bias that, okay, one segment, I'm not using the word, what you said. So one segment of the gender is suppressing the other is something that we always talk about. And I was so ignorant to bring that up. And it was the fair gender. I'm not using, yes. So it was a fair gender who said, oh, no, that's not the case. You're getting us wrong. Actually, we both complement each other. So they have certain strength and we have certain strength. And if the other gender is useless, we take over. If we are useless, they take over. This is a very unfiltered, expression, and from them. So that is my this thing. But from speaking from my instincts, and this question is for you. When we speak about men, we always see them as demons, especially in this context. But as a brother, as a father, of course, I don't have children, but I do have father instincts. But I'm very protective. When my mother goes out, I just don't want her to go out alone. And if I don't want to let my sister go alone because I am scared of certain things, and I would go after or with her. And do you consider that as suppression? And when we're talking about this, then why would men who are protective are left out of the discussion? And should men who are maybe oppressors, suppressors, and then not who are also protectors, who has these instincts, don't we have inclusive of those men in this discussion?
Very fair point. And in fact, thank you so much. Very fair point. And also, we are again becoming very discriminatory because we are not discussing gender as a gender, and there are other people as well. But your point was, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks to all the speakers. May I now open the floor? We have 10 minutes to go, if I am fair with our panel members as well. Yes, less than 10 minutes. And I will request to not ask questions, rather give your viewpoints and instincts. And again, time will be more for the students. Go ahead, Sunita. That's what I said. We are already discriminatory in this panel discussion, and I apologize for that, because I already put the second question on my own because the whole discussion was going on women. So we, of course, we need more time to discuss about other gender as well, which I'm accepting it. We have not yet gone past men and women, and then we will talk about other genders. I was trying to get actually one person from Hyderabad itself, from NAPM. I did not succeed to get the person here. Otherwise, it would have been wonderful conversation here. Yeah. So maybe because you are speaking from there, nobody is hearing from the online, but of course here, may I request from the participants if you want to raise some point or have some uh, points to talk on the subject, but not really to questions, because I will take the session closer by another 5 minutes.
Can I begin?
Yes.
Thank you, Mansi. So I just want to bring one thing to attention is from what Kanna said, that he feels protective about sister or mother. Now the whole issue is over there when you're talking about enabling men, not enabling men. Yeah. So why? What are you scared of? Why should you be scared? Why don't we have an environment which is not scary for women at all, just like it is not for men? That is where the issue.
The whole discussion is on that actually, but it's difficult when people take
So
it
how do
very
you sensitize?
personalized when these
So when,
discussions go.
yeah, so you sensitize men when they are young, when they are boys, that you respect women, just like you respect everybody else. So that I think has to come very early. That's my take on what you ask. What should men
Yeah,
be?
thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else would like to raise some point? Now I will encourage all the youth to really speak up.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm sharing my experience, which I had during my internship. So we were asked to do a river user survey, and there were male, young male who wanted to who wanted to do data collection on the river users, and unfortunately, I went along with the male person, and the male person couldn't collect the data from a woman. So it is, but I, as a woman, can go to the bathing men and collect the data. I had that advantage, but men did not have that advantage. So it is also the social, the instincts or the social constraints that male researchers, when they go for a field work, has, because research is not about just the desktop work. We have to go to the field work. I, as a woman, has to face a lot of issues to take a lot of travel. But a male person can easily do that. But he cannot see the gender perspective or the women perspective because he has a social constraint. But I don't have a social constraint. But I have a constraint to go for a field work.
Very
So
well
this
put. Huh?
thing-
Very well put. Yeah. So thank you. Naveen is going to ask a question. Naveen. We're just collecting viewpoints and not taking questions in the interest of time.
So in social sector, what I've noticed is there's this thing called donor speak. So whenever a donor speaks of something, that translates into how we operate. So in the last few years, we have increased focus on gender. We have system change, theory of change, and these things are how we operate. So if as a forum or in the larger discourse, if we can influence how donor uses this terminology, because when gender is equated to women, that's because donor is specifically looking at women. What is the impact created on women? How are your interventions impacting women and their livelihoods? So if we can change that narrative, that actually helps a lot. Thank you.
Very well put. I think we have to change the narrative itself. Yes, there's a student.
So continuing with you, I would just like to put forward, like sometimes we go into utopian thinking and we don't look into the reality. So when like let's say someone says we should mention things like this and all that, but the reality is in some hardcore areas, even though even let's say leave rural areas or where men have this hardcore point of view, anti. So even in educated institutions, we find men who are doing the very same thing that they preach against. So I think we need to be more practical and then also like the point in wherever the equality for opportunities is propagated. Most sometimes we also see it ending up for equality for outcome instead of equality for opportunity. So that brings forward the issue of incompetent people rising up the ranks. So that creates a really bad impression for the coming generations. So, yeah, that's
Very well put, but I have to really say that this discussion always men brings out because they are seeing the line starting in a race from the point where they are starting. So you have to understand this is in reservation as well as both in gender. If you see over the timeline, the line already started much faster for men than for women. So then, of course, you are in this time frame, so you are relating that. As far as change is concerned, that also takes lot of time. And in the interest of time, I will take one last student because students are getting more privilege. Okay, go ahead.
Ma'am, I want to build upon Sonia ma'am's point.
Very
regarding
good.
Sensitization. That we should try to create an environment which will take care of consciousness of people so that they can work to conservation of the environment as an individual rather than as a man, woman, or the third gender.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point to close the session because I would personally like to live a day when we don't have to discuss gender. It's just a human. So I think we want to buy some time. So we bought 10 minutes from this session. I would like to thank all our 4 speakers. They are cooperative enough to buy me 10 minutes time so that we can accommodate few more things. Thank you so much. And before we start the next session also, thanks Preeti, Chandra, Richu and Kanna. I look forward to having more of these conversations and probably debates also.